What's going on? What is going on, brother? It seems like it's been forever. We've recorded. It's probably what, at least 2 weeks. It's probably been
I
about
guess
two
it's been a
weeks.
little bit of time.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
had that
yeah.
one day where we had an opportunity to take a little break for a moment simply because we had recorded an extra episode. I think that's what it was.
I don't know if it was an extra episode, but we definitely had one to spare. So,
We
uh,
use it as an extra. So
man, guys, what's going on? It is Community Beacon. It is probably 6:30 Friday when you're listening to this. Hopefully, well, I guess that's if you catch it when we first air it, and if not, catching the replay, we still appreciate it. Nonetheless, I am Michael Seville. You're probably, I don't know, I would consider myself humble. You might not. Real estate guy here in South Florida, because I know
you're a
what
humble
I
guy.
know. I know what I know,
You're a
though.
humble
You
guy.
know what I mean?
You're a
Like
humble guy.
I know what I know, but and I
I
appreciate
don't think it's a
that.
bad thing to be able to say what you are. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
If you know who you are, you just know who you are, and
Yeah,
it just is
I
what it
know who I
is.
am. I would consider myself humble because Lord knows I shut up a lot when people get to talking and it's not necessarily
Mm.
correct. But what I've heard is that, just because you're right don't mean you have the right. In any event,
Mm.
on the other side of the screen, we got my brother from another mother. We have Mr. the incomparable, Mr. Joel Simmons of the Tenacity Foundation. ¿Cómo está, brother? ¿Qué pasó?
Hey, dale. Todo bueno. ¿Y tú?
Absolutely bueno, muy bien, gracias. My Spanish teacher was from Cuban, used to say, muy bien, gracias.
Shit.
And he was
They
from,
they added they added a little extra something to that.
yeah,
I'm
he
just
had it.
saying.
He put his little spin on it. And I tell you what, I never forgot it. I never forgot it.
Man.
This was 12th grade. Oh my gosh, the stories I had. He was the basketball coach. I think he was
Mm.
athletic director. He was a basketball coach and athletic director at the time. And man, did he really help us athletes out.
Mm.
He always sat me next to the person with the most information in the class. I was able to glean off of that person. And that was chemistry. So we had to learn like all of the periodic tables, memorize those things. But that was an awesome experience. So shouts out to him. It's always good to have teachers or mentors or people from your past that you can kind of think of and smile and like really identify people who inspired or motivated and just really helped you. Miss Span was another one. I used to say back in the day, I know I did most of the work. However, with her help, all the times I was sent to the office at Suncoast where she kind of just said, "Hey, just go back to class." So shouts out to Miss Span too, because I would
Mm.
have spent an inordinate amount of time in detention. But she,
Mm.
she said, "Just go on back to class. No, you don't got to go to in school today." And so yeah, appreciate Miss Span too, brother. And yeah, who do you remember any of your high school teachers or Coach Bake? Oh my gosh. Oh, I could go on because there was a lot of people who played a part in my matriculation through school. High school.
Yeah.
I don't even want to get into middle school because I was a whole fool around eighth grade time. I look at all right. I'm rambling, but I look at my son Elijah. Shouts out to Elijah. I,
Yeah.
I
That's
think
my
I just
man right there.
I think I just gave him his phone privileges back. So he's feeling he's
That's the way
feeling
that works. That's
yeah,
real.
yeah. I think I just gave his phone privileges back. I was going through his phone like a insecure partner. And I was looking through some of this stuff, and they all the photos in there, and I'm taking pictures. I'm like, man, look how these kids act. This is their personality essentially when they're away from home. I mean, and I think that's a testament to the parenting because Lord knows I think we have some excellent kids as far as I'm concerned. I look at them and I'm just like, thank God, thank God that he didn't really pull from my handbag, but he still has his own style, and I'm seeing them. They're posing in these pictures and they're he's in his 8th grade year, his final year, last 2 months of middle school. So I think when you get to 8th grade, you kind of think like you're running the school or something. I know I did when I was in 8th grade. And
Mm.
so it's interesting to see. Jonah's in a couple of the pictures too. And so, it's interesting to see
That's funny.
their personality, like that, the 8th grade personality, kind of, just how they act. And I thought it was funny and interesting to take a look at it. And thank God that it wasn't, because I'm so glad we didn't have all these different photos and Facebook and Twitter and social media to actually document what it was. I can probably take a look at my middle school yearbook and see all the comments from people like this. Michael was a fool in there. Anyway, but go ahead, brother. Just going taking a trip down memory lane.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, man.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, man. Yeah. Hey, listen, it's interesting. You know, it's interesting watching these young men grow up. Just dealing with my little son now, because there was something else watching my girls grow up,
Right.
but now watching Jonah grow is totally different. And I'm totally different. So it,
Mm.
it makes everything, it's like I've changed so much. I've been raising kids for over 25 years, 26 years. It's like things have changed. I'm not an old man, you know, but I
Right.
mean, but we're getting close to the 3 decades of grooming kids at this point in time, and it's just like you see those changes. And
Yeah.
I think about that now, like, gosh, my parents, it hit me hard enough 25 years ago when I realized how many things my mother was right about. I was like, oh, now I get why she did that, but now 25 years later, now I'm looking back over like, all right, I could have did that a little bit better,
Right. Right.
it's just,
In
and it's,
your own experience of it. When was that,
hmm,
yeah, your own experience. 25 years is it's a long.
it's 25 years.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, and it's long to us today because it's today,
Yeah.
So give it another 25 years and it's like, that was a, walk in the park, do 50 years with the kid, and understand what it's like to have a 40-year-old child or a 50-year-old child. And like, boom, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Because it's just I don't even fathom it. But right now, my mother and I are like best friends, and she's
Mhm.
got a 44-year-old child. It's just like I don't know what she's thinking. Thank God that I am who I am. Like you said, I'm a humble
Yeah.
guy, but I ain't the other guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the guy that I was 26 years ago. So
Growth is something to behold. And it's, I mean, I think it would behoove us a lot, and this is what we're doing. We had a conversation, you and I, Tuesday. Me and the brother got a chance to get together at one of my favorite spots in Palm Beach, in Palm Beach Gardens. This is a real relaxing spot, and we kind of were talking about being rooted and grounded. And so I think this is a part of, for me personally, of being grounded in things is when you can actually sit, stop, and be in the moment and reflect about how far you've come, because a lot of us have we've come quite a ways. I mean, and here's a blessing of having social media. If you were on it and you've been on it since the beginning, maybe 2005, 10, is that I would it would behoove you, if you ever get a chance sometime, to just go back and look at all your pictures or possibly some of your posts, and that's documented. And those of you who have diaries, go back into your diaries, or journals, and go back that, how many years that goes back, and take a look at it. I have one thing for me is my Apple Notes. I think I started Apple, I don't know, right around 2012, 13 is when I probably started buying Apple products. So I have notes that date back till about that. Some, it might be earlier than that, I'm not sure. But every now and then I'll scroll all the way down my Apple Notes and just look at some of the things that I was putting together. And maybe it was 2011 and 12, because I remember like my first business plans Like I'm looking at my Apple Notes and I'm seeing, I'm just like, whoa, I had this, I had this, I had that. And then
Mm,
some of the goals I had I reached those goals? Did I make a redirection of those goals? Are these still goals in my life? So I think this all is a part of like just being able to be grounded and reflecting on where you've come, because sometimes we may think that things aren't going as fast as they could be, compared to who, is what I always say. Or we think that we're stuck, and in reality, many people have come a long way. Now
mm.
there are some of us who are stuck in time, um, and that's okay too. What about you, brother?
Yeah, man, I like that. You know, yeah, that whole reflection, that whole reflection, reflecting back on where I came from and how I got to where I am, and like you too. Um, and when you came into my life, likewise, Beethoven and Lou, can't forget the brothers, you know. Um, but it's something else. I was just thinking about this and I started to talk with my wife about it last night. And, my grandmother, um, my grandmother-in-law passed away when I first
Hmm.
met you. It was within a month or two she had passed away, and it was that was something else
Hmm.
because I mean, like she lived with us. You know what I'm saying? So this was 14 years ago. So we've been friends for 14 years. We've been brothers for 14 years, and the bond has only gotten closer,
I
right?
think so.
But that's a decade and a half, right? So we're talking about our children were just born. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, Elijah's 14.
Elijah's 14, Jonah's
Yeah.
13, right? Just born. So it's like that part of life was just created right there for those children, like reflecting on that, and I was reflecting on Abuela. And it's like she came into my life and I 100% accepted her. It was just like she spoke Spanish. I did not, but I spoke the best Spanish that I ever spoke in my life while she was alive.
Right.
The desire to communicate with her was much greater while she was alive, you know. And it's just, man, it's like these things come back to you. And it's like, where did time go?
Mm.
You know, where did it go? But I remember that. I remember that. I remember calling you guys up, and I remember I called somebody up. Maybe it was Eusebius, and call them up. So I don't know, man. I don't like to get stuck. I'm like you. People get stuck in time. I think that's very, very well put. You know, time is it's an infinite measurement that is measured out to human beings,
Hmm.
and I really don't believe that time is as sequential as as it is on Earth as it is outside of Earth. I think that things just kind of like move, and they move as they move, when they move, while they move. So, but as I always say, that's neither here nor there, and pun intended. You know what I mean? So it's just, uh, huh, interesting.
Life is full of, and this, because it was interesting that I think we always, there's almost like a couple of things that we always come back to in this show, because it's so important for us to understand these things. And we value growth, so that's why most oftentimes we're not stuck in time, and other people value other things. And this is no judgment, this is just observations that we value growth. But in regards to time, I was looking at someone, they were a Jamaican person had made a joke talking about Jamaican mathematics. And one of the things in Jamaica is that like there's really no time. It's you know, soon come. It's like, and you're like, we don't know when that is. But essentially, is I'll get there when I get there. and someone says, "Well, what's up with Jamaicans and time? Like, how come they don't, quote unquote, respect time?" Um, the way that we structure time, specifically in a Western culture that's really, capitalistic business type society, is like, it's very structured to the minute, et cetera, et cetera. Where you go outside of Western culture, you start to see time as more of it's a concept. It's an ebb and flow. It's a flow of like just how it is. Because soon come mean that you might never get there. I might I might never see you, right? Um, but if we do, then I got there, and I got there at the time that this nature allowed it, which just furthers the concept to me that Einstein said it best, where time is relative. Um, and oftentimes we only pay attention when we're comparing it to something else or someone else or what other people are doing. That's why it's really important for you to really understand who you are and what it is that you have going on, and the context of your life. I digress. So we go back, and you and I have been 14 years, have all of these experiences. You're right, and I remember you, man. You were going through. You had a lot going on back when we first met. Honestly, I used to say you had like, I think you had like 5 jobs at the time, brother. No, no, like the brother had 5 jobs at the time, and weathered a lot of things, life experiences. Uh, and what is so encouraging about you is that throughout it all, you've remained at the core a person of integrity. Because even at like some of the most, you know, I'm not going to tell, what everything that you had going on, but death in itself within all of that. And what we were going through, because me and the brother met through a fraternity like experience. Um, he showed up when he needed to show up. Uh, I think sometimes at the expense of your health, because I don't think anybody drank those energy drinks like I've seen anybody to this day drink energy drinks like you were drinking energy drinks. I don't know. I don't know if it was necessarily Red Bull. It was something. You had a drink of an energy drink of choice, and the brother would show up with all kinds of energy. Sometimes his body was there, sometimes his mind wasn't. Sometimes his mind was there, and sometimes his body wasn't. But it was just it was always but it was always within integrity uh, and principles, and so man, there's some interesting stories that go along with it. Some now probably looking back, laughing at it. Um,
Yeah, memory lane, man. Memory lane. You
yeah, yeah.
know, I think that that's kind of crazy though. That I can look back, and I don't know if this is where you're headed with that. I feel like some of this is where you're headed with it, but like I think about you, and there's so much that has remained absolutely the same. I don't mean like there's hasn't been any elevations, because I've definitely noticed the elevation in communication and word choice, elevation in business style and how you maneuver. I've noticed all those things. I've noticed all those things about how you maneuver around people and how you communicate. All of these different things has been an elevation. But I've also noticed that for me, you remain like the same type of individual. And I think and so when you said at the core, I love that, because when you think about God, you think about God and he says, "For I'm the Lord, I change not." It's like, well, why wouldn't the Lord change? Well, of course, because he's perfect, so he wouldn't
Right.
change. But then we're made and created in the image of God. So why do we change often? Well, it's because I believe it's because we have many attributes that are not godly. If all of our attributes were godly, there would be no reason to ever change. If everything that we did was in accordance to the creator that created us, we would never have a reason to change ever. Our mindset would be right, our heart would be right, what we did with our body would be right, what we did with our speech would be right. We would be operating at the highest capacity at all times. And I don't know if that would be really a humanistic experience, but if God created man in his own image, then how far is a humanistic experience from the creator? It can only be but so far, because I mean, I look at your sons, and I see you in them. I look at mine and I see me in him. And then I see the attributes
Right.
that have bled into him, that have progress. There's a saying that says the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I see it. I see those things. Just the other day, you were talking about, we were discussing about our sons and how sometimes, we get into that little mode, and you were talking about the hug. And I was like, that was interesting right there, you know, because years ago, you were the non hugger,
Yeah,
right?
I'm not a hugger.
Yeah.
I wasn't a hugger.
But 14 years have passed now.
Yeah, I'm a
And
big hugger.
yeah, yeah,
Fuck.
things have changed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's it. That's interesting in regards to the hugs too. I'm always messing with them now. Just this morning, I think I told he needed to pay off his due, which was interesting because me and him had this whole economic conversation this morning as best that I could explain to him. Because he owes what did he call it? His dues or something. I don't know. He had something that the school gives you when you lose books. So he has to pay them before he can go off to the ninth grade. I forget what the term it is that they use. Long story short, he's asking me for $84. And I said, this is the craziest thing in the world to me. I said, this is like an illusion. I said, they give you books that you don't want. And then naturally you didn't really take care of them because you didn't want them in the first place. And really, money's not a thought process to him. Um, and then they tell you that you need to pay them $82 in order to go to the next grade, which like he really did. It doesn't really matter to him either. Like he doesn't want to be there. I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna tell Elijah just doesn't want. He's like, I don't get it. I said, and then I have to pay 82. It was this whole entire concept. Well, anyways, I digress. I wasn't a hugger, but the hugging goes back to just as through experiences and understanding. And for me, I say forehead kisses and hugs. Um, Being the person with more information and knowledge and understanding of emotional and having more emotional intelligence, especially in the heat of the moments, I've realized that forehead kisses and hugs bring people back to presence, like touch. That's why some people say you can go out into nature, and if you really start to meditate, is to feel the air around you or see the space in between. All these ways are ways of getting people back to the present moment so they can get grounded, so that you can, like I said, especially in the intense moments, so that you can get grounded. And it's really like it's an exchange of energy. So if I can gather all of my resources and this person in front of me doesn't, like let's say it's Elijah, say he gets upset or something, but I'm like, hey, just give me a hug. um it'll bring him back to saying, like, we're still in this moment, we're still sharing something, there's still love there, because love is always there.
Mm.
But the hug or the forehead, I call it hugs and forehead kisses. The hugs and the forehead kisses help to bring people back to the present. Most people don't know that this is happening, right? This is just me that just went really deep into understanding people and the power of touch. When words can't get through, when people are cued or triggered. I'm not going to say triggered anymore. I heard someone say cued, and I like that a lot better. When we cue up a certain sub personality in people that makes them regress or feel certain feelings in order to bring it back. So now it's something that I do. So granted, I don't like to hug everybody. Like I'm really personal about my space, like my space. I still love my space, because at the core of me, I do. But however, it's an awesome way to kind of share a moment and bring people to the grounded, to the present, bring them to the present moment. But you've been a hugger, brother.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's interesting. You know, just what you're saying right there, because I think that the like I said, the core. We're talking about the core of us, and that's how I grew up. I grew up around my mother, my grandmother, and aunties. Wasn't a lot of men around, so they were always hugging and kissing on me. My mother used to give me like 1,000 kisses.
Mm,
When my first child came out, I used to give her 1,000 kisses. I would count them out, you know, and it was interesting. There's a lot behind that too. Talking about stories, it just reminded me of one then. But you always go back to who you are at the core of you. Like I am, I was the only child, and I like my space too. So yes, I like to be around. I like to, get the hug. I like to give the hug. I like to show compassion. I like to show that, I like to show love. I like to touch, and I believe that there's a lot in that. But when it comes to it, I also like to distance myself from everybody. I don't want anybody in the room. And I'm gonna tell you something that's really interesting. There's a couple of people that have managed to become those individuals who, when I like to be alone, I like to be alone with them.
mm,
And I don't know that I ever would get there to the point. I mean, we don't have to talk or anything like that, but I enjoy them being inside the room with me, and they doing they and me doing me.
mhm.
And so that was interesting because for me, that's a whole new level of, it's like isolation without being isolated.
Right.
And just, I don't know. I just brought that up. But this is what I was going to say. Ephesians chapter 3:17, that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith, that ye, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all saints what is the breadth and length and depth and height, and to know the love of Christ, which passeth knowledge, that ye may be filled with all the fullness of God. Let me say just a little more. Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us, unto him be glory in the church by Christ Jesus through all ages, world without end. Amen. And I just love that because I was thinking about this scripture, and then you said grounded in love.
Mm.
And I had pulled the scripture up and I wrote a little note about it. And, and it's like,
Recently or now?
no, when we first started talking about being grounded, I pulled up
Okay,
a
okay, got
couple
it.
of scriptures. And while I waited, or I shouldn't say waited, while I was listening to you speak and taking that in, I had wrote it down. I said, well, if that comes up, I'm going to bring it up. Like I got a couple of notes here. I haven't spoke about all of them, but then you said it. And I said,
It's the synchronicity
definitely.
of the thing. This is It's
Yeah.
the synchronicity thing. I'm gonna tell you, it's a couple things that um wow, I think it's just getting stronger and stronger as this time goes by. Is Kenyatta, and you know Kenyatta. Kenyatta used to come on when we were going live. Kenyatta would show up a lot of the times. It was interesting because me and her, for whatever reason, it's like we are on the same schedule. I've been especially specifically when I have my oldest. My gym schedule tends to be sporadic. I'm up and sometimes I'm not. After I go through my whole morning rituals, I'm like, up. By the time I go to the gym, I'm only gonna have 45 minutes because I got to get back and take him to the bus stop or school or get him ready. Make sure he's ready. I'll make sure he's ready, but support him in him getting ready. Uh, and so I'll go to the gym a little bit later, or sometimes I'm just like, listen, I'm not going now. I just, I'm, I'm not ready to go. And somehow sometimes we just show up and we just got it into our system where we're like, we're on the same consciousness. So I saw her today and I'm like, oh, there we go. We're on the same consciousness. And then she was like, yeah, I cut sugar in the last 7 days. And I'm like, yep, I just cut sugar in the last 7 to 8 days as well. So it's just, and now, and within this as well was the grounded in love of you being able to pull that scripture up. Um, and I said all that to say this because, and this even goes back to uh, when we first met because you were always grounded in love. Like you used to come into the room with the situation taking place with uh, your abuela, and just used to smile and everything was grounded in love. And even when you met me, like I was people you had to see me, and that was a if you had met me before, then it was deeper. But I'm a very and I still am pretty rigid, and I enjoy it because it does work through it. I work I really work on the skills of communication because I really am me. Like there's no I don't even know how to explain it, but I love it and I am me. I'm a lot more compassionate. I get to add compassion and empathy. Long story short, me and the brother, and we told this story maybe several times. Like it's interesting because how can you butt heads with Joe? You know what I mean? Like, because Joe comes like this, like arms out, like he mentioned, arms out, receiving, like, hey, everything is great. And I'm just like,
You can't even do the look anymore.
I can't
You can't
even,
even do the look
I
anymore.
can't, I try.
Yeah, no, you can't even do the look anymore. That ain't nah, you
Not
still
even
ain't
on it.
got it. No, there you used to have that look. I said, gosh, man, are we gonna have to fight? What is going on? I think he wants to take me out. Oh my gosh.
But man, we couldn't have picked. I'm sorry, we're still going down memory lane. We couldn't have picked a better group of guys. I'm telling you, to join together. Us four was just it was a force to be reckoned with, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I like
And
it.
that could be both the blessing and the curse because at that time, and still now, when we got together, like we moved mountains, guys, and I'm giving no joke. Things got done. Events got put together, things got done, people excelled, the synergy was there. You know, People who thought they couldn't remember anything were remembering 30 pages worth of information and being able to spit it out. So it's a sight to behold. And this is definitely going to be one of my old guy stories. As I matriculate in age, if God for sees fit for me to get to that age. Um, but what we did, there was a lot of balancing thing. And here's the great thing about it as well is that at our core, because we're going back to the core, I think, and we're made in the image of God. I think a lot of the things that we do have to be with like remembering before a lot of certain experiences happened to us as we got older. Because a lot of these things that we experience, or excuse me, a lot of these beliefs that we had were developed through experiences that we had and images that were portrayed, etc., or things just not having certain things that we thought we should have had. Um, Perspective. So we got together, and it was like what someone thought was missing, it was there. Um, because Lou, if you don't remember, Lou had just lost his mother and father not too long prior to that. So it was like he lost his mother and father. If you know my story, I lost my sisters and shoot, my best friend Rock. Man, Beethoven lost Rock around 2008, etc. My grandfather had passed. So there was a lot of loss. So there was a lot of understanding and love, and it was just like the perfect mixture of breaking down walls. Because if Joel wasn't the person that he was, we probably would have fought. Right? Like if Joe wasn't as receiver, a lot of people probably could, and I know it. A lot of people can't. Especially back then, couldn't really take me. It was just like, yeah, Mike is just gonna be blunt. He's not gonna mince words with you, and he's gonna tell you what's on his mind, kind of deal. And if it wasn't Joe, then it probably would have been something else. If it wasn't Beethoven, it probably would have been issues. And if it wasn't Lou, it was like everyone gave each other the room and the space to kind of be what it was. And then as we went through that, this is why you got it. This is why I'm glad you're going to be doing your men's group when that comes back, because first off, I'm really tired of hearing guys have feelings on the internet and it being validated by other guys having feelings on the internet and not going out and experiencing certain things. I'm not saying that people can't have feelings. I'm not saying that you can't say it, but to say it over and over and over and over and over again, all it does is strengthen this belief in your mind that this thing is the way that it is, and there's no action happening.
What do
Um,
you mean by guys have feelings? I don't understand that.
there's a lot of the internet now has it seems as if, anyways, this is what's perpetuated, is that we all have feelings. There's a time when men were men and we kind of didn't think about those feelings. If you look at like the baby boomer, really the silent generation, and you had the baby boomers generation, etc. So it wasn't really explained. A lot of people don't know that men have issues happening because we tend to kind of keep it to ourselves because it's not the masculine thing to do. Um,
Hmm.
but however, everyone has feelings. Everyone has, feels ways about whatever it is, and that's okay. It's okay for you to do it, and it's okay for you to validate it. If anyone else validates it, they're really extending grace to you because a person doesn't have to do anything for you. Like no one has to validate anything. But what I was getting at is that you have these feelings. These feelings aren't necessarily real. That's why to everybody else, they're real to you because they're yours, and that's why you should validate them. But I don't have to validate someone else's feelings because it's not real. It's just how you feel. But if I do validate them, and I think a compassionate or empathetic person will, or at least get the understanding of it, and allow you to understand that we understand you, then that helps, right? However, if you continue to if it's always um what do you call it, like a trauma session, I'm just
Becomes
repeating the same.
dependency.
Yeah, it's a codependency, and you're strengthening those neural pathways. You're strengthening that this is the way that it is, and there's no resolution to that. Now you're going out looking for things to support a feeling, right? So you're
Hmm.
looking for things to support a feeling.
Dopamine fix.
Yeah, it's all of that, and trauma bonding, and you're looking for people and nothing gets done. Like I definitely think men are out here. We should be creating. We should be strengthening things. Like there's so much more that can and could be done if we're not using up a lot of this mental energy to deal with X, X, and O. Let's talk about it. Let's see what it is, and let's see where the limited belief is, and let's see if we can gain a different perspective from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Myron Golden would say be do have.
Be
Yeah.
do have. Be do have.
I like that.
Um, so we're doing these groups, and once again, it's okay for us to have these feelings. I'm not telling anyone to repress your feelings because they'll be there until the straw breaks the camel's back. However, at some point in time, and this is on your own time, everyone's going to be different. We need to move in a certain direction in order to build, to create, whatever that may be. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, it's just there's a necessity, right? I this is this is my belief. There's a necessity. There's a necessity. There's a necessity sometimes to repress the feeling. There's a necessity sometimes to give the feeling away. There's a necessity sometimes to follow the flow path of the feeling. It's like, and going back to being made in the image of God, created in the image of God. You know, if every single thing that we did was according to God, then I think that a lot of things that we discuss are unnecessary. We don't even need to dive into it because we've drawn so far away. Like we were just talking about, I mentioned how the apple falls not far from the tree, an old saying. And you can look at your son, look at my son, we can see the similarities of their parents inside of those children. Apple don't fall far from the tree, but across the world, if mankind is created in the image of God, it's like, okay, well, what percentage of those apples are still close to that tree? Because some of those apples, they will have to follow some type of light to get back to that tree, to sprout, to grow, where the trees blossom, to be planted like a tree by the rivers of water, Psalms 1:1, you know, to be that type of tree that when it grows, its leaf has abundance underneath, and underneath the branches of it, there's abundance. Like God, the creator, who created us with an abundance in mind. You know, go out, have dominion. Let me bring every animal to you. I just want to see what you call them. Right? Arms wide open. So
I'm just doing the abundance thing because it's like go out, be
be
fruitful,
fruitful.
and multiply. What happens is, and this is okay. This is a conversation that needs to be had. What This is a conversation that needs to be had. We spend a lot of time, unfortunately, we spend a lot of time in separation and lack of acceptance. Like lack of acceptance and separation. We're spending a lot of time we're spending a lot of energy and effort in attempting to do a certain thing instead of accepting it. Because if you're told that you have dominion, if you're told to go out there and be fruitful and multiply, that means that the abundance is already there. However, if you're stuck and you're separated, and we spoke about this a couple months ago in regards to like labeling. Like this is why you really have to be careful about what it is that you're labeling and how you label these feelings. These feelings are okay, but how are you labeling them? What is the perspective that you have on them? Because if you have a limited perspective, if you have a limited scope on these feelings, that's when the stuckness happens. If I'm this, what is this about? I'm wondering if I should talk about it. OJ Simpson died yesterday. May the Lord be pleased with him. And I was in the eighth grade when the trial of the was it the trial of the century? Is that what they were calling it? Or the trial of the decade? It was a trial of the it was a trial of the something. And I'm in the eighth grade, and I knew what I knew then. No resources, other resources, and it ended up becoming a black and white thing almost. It was like, I distinctly remember when the verdict was read. a lot of people that were black were excited and they jumped up. We were in school at the time, as a matter of fact. And then I remember my teacher, she started crying and she was very upset. And she was very upset and she started crying. Um, my my desk used to sit. She sat me like right next to her, and I was like staring at the class, and the class was staring at me. That was that's where I was at that time. It was long story short.
Man,
With
you did
yeah,
something
yeah,
special.
yeah. I was there. She definitely wanted me right next to her. Shouts out to
Mm.
her. Um, Now years later, the man has passed away. Um, and it's almost like a rehashing of that wound. And now when I take a step back, just from my own experiences and really allowing me to have an experience of it, regardless of whether he was guilty or he was found not guilty for any or he was acquitted of the charges. So that shows you that. I mean, I don't think OJ was never he was a professional football player, not a professional murderer. So unless he knew the people to clean that thing up, you're going to be hard pressed to. Anyways, what should have been what I'm looking at and should have been highlighted is the disparity of the rich going into the courtroom having a lot of money and being able to afford adequate counsel versus not being able to afford adequate counsel. Like that's really the disparity. The disparity saying not that there's a black system, there's a white system. Not to say that there aren't biases, etc. However, there is a disparity if you have money or you have wealth and you don't have wealth. That's really what goes on in the judicial system. If you can afford it, a better representation, etc., you're going to have a better chance versus if you can't afford it. You're working with a what do they got call the guys who represent you? The
Mm. Like a district attorney or
those are the ones that try
uh,
you, like the state attorney.
got it.
Anyway, we don't even want that to happen, but I want you all to
Court
really
appointed attorney.
attorney, yeah, but I forget what they call them. But these guys have caseloads of like, first off, they're not getting paid a lot. Like you think you're going to you become a lawyer, you got $200,000 in student debt, and you're getting paid $45,000, $50,000 to represent 100 people, 100 guys. So these guys are telling you off the rip, like, listen, just take a deal. Let's see if we can get you a deal versus having Johnny Cochran and a whole team of attorneys who are just like, we get to dissect this, we get to send out private investigators. We get to check on the experts of the we have expert to testimony to value testimony. So essentially, that's what it is. However, when you get caught up in the label, if you get caught up in the label of this is a black thing versus a white thing, you really miss the point. And you get so triggered. And this is why I say labels are so important. You get so triggered about this thing over here, you're missing that what's actually going on because it's bigger than what it is that we actually think it is. Oh man, I'm sorry, I had to bring it up. Um, so I think it's very important. Let me get grounded again. I think it's very important for us to pay attention to what it is that we are receiving. Like what it is that what are we actually what we're looking at. Mm.
I'm glad you went back there. I'm glad. I'm really glad you did. You know that. I mean, we're in line with that because that's the same. It's along the same line that I was thinking about with feelings. You know, and you had mentioned earlier about perspective. You know, I was thinking about the word point of view. And the thing about it is like when I say that some people have to hold on to a feeling and follow it all the way through, Some people do. And it's because your perspective doesn't always change until you meet some type of resistance.
Explain that. Get a feeling and follow it all the way through. If you,
So so there's people who have had bad relationships.
okay.
You know, I deal with a lot of relationships. For whatever reason, I'm the guy that a lot of people bring their relationships to. So sometimes somebody will, quote unquote, fall in love.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody on the outside says that's not a good relationship. The
Mm-hmm.
person on the inside, they say, I'm in love. This is the best relationship. Now, they continue to move down a pathway until they reach a rigid end. Sometimes they come near to death. I'm just using this as one example of millions. At that point, some people realize this was the worst decision I've ever made. I'll never put myself in that
I'm
position
sorry.
again.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I literally was just speaking with somebody a couple of days ago about a scenario that is just like this. And so they make a right turn, you know, they turn from there. Now, here's the thing. Many times we on the outside, we look at that, and only thing that we see from the outside point of view is just the individual with the other individual, and this is a bad relationship. But if we separate the individuals, only few can see that individual A is in a bad relationship with self, and individual B is in a bad relationship with self. And it's not that the two of them together were necessarily the bad relationship, but the two of them separately were already
Already.
heading down a pathway of destruction. When they came together, it simply moved it forward even faster.
Right.
And now somebody from the outside looking in has the opportunity to say, hey, listen, you being with them is going to ruin all of these things. And when it comes to head, then that's generally what happens. It's always that other person's fault. This is
Always.
not
Well,
the example for everybody. There's hundreds of millions of examples. But just to say that sometimes people are pit into scenarios because this is the only way that you can be brought out of your own mindset. It's the only way that you're able to turn the lens. You're able to take the lens off the camera that you're using and put a different lens on and see from a different perspective. Because sometimes it takes a rock bottom experience before we realize that I was the one that was destined for failure, that I was the one who continued to call for those things that would hurt me, that I was the one that put me into scenarios and situations and environments that were harmful to me, that I was the one that was introducing those things that would destroy me, that I was the one who brought this on myself. Yes, there are scenarios where people enter into, cross our pathways that we have nothing to deal with, nothing to do with. We were just going to the grocery store and it happened to be that. Those things happen. But many times we put ourselves in these positions and we remain oblivious to the circumstances that if we had not done A, B, C, D, or whatever, that we probably would have never met individual A or individual B or been in environment A or environment B. And how do we, there's no way for us to be able to see that or to understand it or to know that because we are literally making decisions in time all the time. That's it. I'm making the decisions as I live. My eyesight does not go so far beyond my eyesight. I don't see so far beyond what I see. Occasionally, me personally, this is a spiritual level. I have visions and my visions come to pass and I know it when it gets there, but I haven't been the type of guy who's been able to figure out how to use it to my advantage today. It may show up next month or next year, but I don't know all of the breadcrumbs that are laid out ahead of me to follow to get to that position so that I can use it to the best of my ability. Sometimes it's just like deja vu. When I get there, I'm like, oh man, I'm here now, you know. But at that point in time, everything has already happened. And
Right.
I just simply know that I was warned about this scenario before it happened. And it gives me encouragement because I believe it
Yeah.
came from above. So that means I'm going to go through and I'm
Yep.
not going to be stuck. So I'm glad about that. But as you've used the word a few times, I digress. To go back to the initial point, is that these point of views, these perspectives, these feelings, the time analysis, sometimes these things, as being a human, is necessary in order for us to become he whom we must become.
I love it. I always say that the and I heard someone else say they said the universe leaves breadcrumbs, and so we're trying. We're picking them up. I and I don't think I hear you get the vision because I get these things as well, and it comes to as deja vu. But it's more what I call them synchronicities because it's just like it's just affirmation. Like you're headed in the path you're supposed to head. Like this is affirming it, and sometimes it's so loud. It's so loud because you're not picking up the little things that you should have been picking up from before. Like I had a friend, a family member who just recently told me about his encounter with God, and it was like God basically had to come and like just
Shake them.
yeah, just like listen. I even in his dream he expressed he said like God said, I don't know how I can't give it to you. It's not, he said, it's not the rules. That's what he said. It's like, it's not a, it's not, there you go. It's not the rules. I'm, basically, I can't tell you any clearer than what I'm telling you now. Almost if you don't pick it up, what it is. I find that happens a lot. What happens is that oftentimes we don't really go back to that encounter. Right. I think a lot of people like we don't go back to the encounter of when it was like given to us plainly. Like we'll have this rush, like, oh my, this is an exciting thing, and then we don't go back to it. So some of us don't necessarily um once again it goes back to the belief system, but some of it like we are always getting these lessons. This is the same thing why do people say I'm always meeting the same type of person? Well, you continue meeting the same type of person not because of you know there's no other people in the world. You're
It's
meeting
not
the same.
happenstance.
Yeah, it's like you're meeting the same type of person because as you spoke out, brother, we're always making these decisions. We're in this robotic mode to where we're going to the same place. We're acting the same. We're not changing within. We're not being renewed of the mind. We're continuing the same patterns that we're getting, and you are attracting this to you. You're attracting these people to you. When I realized that, like this is the same. This is the same thing, different name. I'm in the same place, different, same place, different city. No matter where you go, there you are. So up
That's it.
until we start to recognize these patterns that we set for ourselves, everyone is not bad. Here's a huge word on the internet, social media, and I took psychology, and I'm big in human nature. It's a huge word. It's narcissism. Everyone, if something happens, this person is a narcissist. This person is a narcissist. And when you and people are preying on that. They got a lady who's the narcissist coach. Well, according to the actual studies, narcissism affects 6% of the population. It's an actual disorder. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but it's according to the studies, it's 6%. They have this lady who became a doctor, and this is her bread and butter. She's saying it's 20% of the population. Okay, fine. I'll go with you, lady who's making your bread and butter off of calling people narcissists and riding the wave. Let's say it is 20% of the population. That means that it's 1 in every 5 people. That's still not a high number. It's a crazy number for people to have 20% of narcissists. But at any point in time, people can have narcissistic tendencies. But according to the DSM-5, the actual guide, the book for psychologists, you have to meet like 5 or 6 of the criteria. And I know because what I started doing was checking people on the criteria. I would go back and hey, this person has 3 things out of good. But at any point in time, every human being will exhibit some type of narcissistic behavior. It's just, one of them is just being selfish, and that and within itself is crazy. I don't even understand how that's a statistic, since most people um at a lower level want to control things, which is all right. I'm not even gonna go there, but we have to start looking within ourselves. Like, what is it about me that I'm attracting, according to the psychologist that is going off of her own studies, attracting this 20% of the population, the lower, let's call them the bottom half of the population, 20% of the population, to me. Right? Like, what behaviors am I exhibiting in public to them say that is a target? And here's a trick. Narcissists only go after people who they believe that they can control. But if you are a person who can't be controlled because your behaviors exhibit it, guess what? They will avoid you because, my saying, the juice is not worth the squeeze. Like, how long am I going to have to spend in order to break this person down? One of the things that narcissists use is to separate you from your family and friends. So if you have a healthy relationship with your family, you have a healthy relationship with your friends, you're going to look at the narcissist in the first 6 months and I got to go spend time with my family. I'm spending time with my friends. My father loves me. My mother loves me. I need to spend time with my mother and father. And what my mother and father, hopefully you have a healthy relationship with them. My mother and father, I respect their advice. They give me decent advice. Or my friends, I have a healthy set of friends. They give me decent advice. I can go to my friend. I can go to Joel, and Joel will say, Mike, I don't know. You might want to look at this again. I know that this person they're exhibiting this, but you really need to check it out. Like, you should have that healthy relationship. But notice I'm saying all the things that you should be doing. However, if you have an unhealthy relationship, you have friends that aren't really there, your friends, they're not really there for you. You have an unhealthy relationship with your parents or family members, etc. Now you're searching for someone that's gonna, quote unquote, here's another term, and I'm gonna use it, love bomb you. They're showing you all this love and all of this attention. And they're, at the beginning of this relationship and meeting all these so-called needs. You're an easy target, and they're going to try it out. But if you make yourself, not make yourself, if you work on yourself and you work on your relationships with people, they are going to they're not going to come, they're not going to be attracted to you because it's too much work. I need to be able to get this person because this is the whole part of their symptom. This is what they do. But it starts with yourself. So if you did get, Lord forbid, because it does happen, and you're in a relationship with a narcissist, it really starts with what are you doing? Because that the only way they're not gonna let you go. You gotta free yourself. You gotta stop taking the phone calls. You gotta stop paying attention to, them crying or them saying they're gonna change, etc. You have to do these things because and so that takes a lot of working on yourself.
Very good.
I love you
Very
all.
good. Very good.
And I get passionate about it because I really do love you all, and I'm at this point now where I'm just taking this step back. And I'm talking a lot during this show. But what I've realized is, and I'm a recovering codependent. So 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 listen to what I'm saying. What I realized within communication is that 80 to 95% of it, I say 95, but I love giving Pareto his props. 80% of the communication should just be listening. So I realized that because and probably 10 to 15% should be asking questions or whatever, but most of the time it should just be listening, because people have to come to the understanding and awareness within themselves that this stuff is happening. But this is a quick point. I ask yourself the question: what is it, or what is my way of being that's attracting the all this type of energy to me? Like what? Like what's your being?
I love that. I love that. And and the thing about that is that that works in any direction that you desire. Any direction. Doesn't matter which one. If you're looking to go higher in life and do greater things in life than what you believe you're already doing, it works.
Yeah.
If you want to stay, like you had mentioned earlier, if you want to stay stuck, you want to continue to welcome darkness into your life, it works. Like that is a neutral statement right there. It works for everybody and it works in every direction, whichever direction you want to go in, you know. So I love it, man. I think that's worthy of closing on right there.
I'm closing with I love you. I love you guys. Get it together. Get it together.
Yeah, it works when you work it.
Amen. All right, guys. We will see you next week. We appreciate you. Um, take care of yourself.
Peace.